The Midcoast Community Council meeting of 27 July 2018 is now in order. Will the council members please introduce themselves from my left?
Dan Haggerty.
Claire Chuton.
Chris
Jim,
Johnson.
Excuse me.
Brandon Kwan.
Dave Olson.
Barbara Mathewson.
Lisa Ketchum.
And I apologize, it is June 27, 2018, just to get the official record correct. All right, our first agenda item is the Board of Supervisors report. Ellie Dahlman.
Alrighty, good evening Midcoast Community Council and Midcoast community members. My name is Ellie Dahlman and I'm here on behalf of San Mateo County Supervisor Don Horsley. And I have 3 items to provide information for you on today. The first is that, actually good news, Senator Jerry Hill, Assembly Speaker Pro Tem Kevin Mullen, Assembly Member Mark Berman, and Supervisor Horsley will hold a news conference to celebrate the state's allocation of the long-sought funding for the creation of a county park at Tenedas Creek. So the governor recently officially signed the state budget, and we do have, I believe, $5 million in the budget to secure, to go towards securing Tenedas Creek State County Park. It would be County Beach. And so that's happening this Friday. The second item,
This Friday?
yes, it's simply a news conference, a press conference to share information with the news outlets. So pay attention in the next few weeks to newspapers and media, and hopefully you'll see some coverage and additional information regarding Tenedas Creek. The second item is an update from the last board meeting. The San Mateo County Board of Supervisors demonstrated the county's commitment to support all communities regardless of immigration status by allocating funding for a deportation defense fund. And it was approximately $764,000 that has been allocated, and staff is expected to come back to the next board meeting with details about how that will actually be spent. And the last item I have for you is regarding National Night Out. Has anybody heard of National Night Out or participated? So this year I believe it's happening on August 7th. It's a Tuesday, and the city of Half Moon Bay has a program where they waive the fee that is typically imposed in order to close down your street to have like a block party for the National Night Out event. And for those of you that don't know what National Night Out event is, it's a nationwide community building campaign encouraging police and community partnerships and neighbor-to-neighbor connections, helping to make our neighborhoods safer, better places to live. And so it's once a year, and Supervisor Horsley this year will also, and the County of San Mateo will be waiving the fee for anyone that's interested in participating in National Night Out this year on August 7th, similar to that of the city of Half Moon Bay. And I believe we'll be working with the Coastside Emergency Preparedness Organization that recently became a nonprofit around this event too, to see about possibly having a kind of encouraging an emergency preparedness focus for the National Night Out. And those are the 3 updates I have for you. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
Anybody on the council? Anybody in the audience? All right, thank you.
Great.
I do have one announcement to make. There will be a housing meeting co-sponsored by Half Moon Bay and the city in Half Moon Bay on Sunday, July 15th. We have a flyer on our webpage. It's also on the Half Moon Bay city webpage. Peggy Jensen, the deputy county manager, will be here at our July 11th meeting to talk about the subject and give a little bit of a preview of what that meeting is about. Anybody else have any announcements?
I guess I have a quick question for Ellie. Is that all right to go
Sure,
back to?
go ahead.
I know it's been going on for a while, but I just wonder if you have any update for us or more information on the county parks director situation?
I don't have any information at the moment, but if you have any questions regarding county parks, Peggy Jensen is the person to contact,
So-
Deputy County Manager.
So we don't have a timeline or any information on a search starting or anything like that?
I'm not aware of any information, but I will share the information once I become aware, or I'll check into it.
Can we get Marlene back?
As far as I know, they haven't posted a new job description yet.
Thanks, Ellie.
Okay, so we are then on to public comment. Does anybody wish to speak for public comment? Please give your name and city of residence.
Hello, I'm Dolores Silva. I live in Moss Beach, and I'm here to make a statement for business density. And we wanted to express our concern for this proposed stoplight at Great Well Cove. It just seems like it's going to create more problems than what are necessary. It doesn't really provide the safety that pedestrians can rely on, it appears to us. And for example, it doesn't make sense that the new crossing point is closer to the blind curve in the south than what it is now. And it will slow traffic, contribute to gridlock on weekends, things that you already know. And it just seems like it's a patch. It's a patch, and it's a short-sighted effort. In the past, the MCC has favored either a pedestrian tunnel or an overpass in this particular location. I understand now that there's a grant that will pay for what is proposed now, but it just isn't safe, and I don't see any other way to look at that, so we just want to make it clear that we hope that you consider this still, and I know that it's coming up on your agenda soon, so we just wanted to make a statement tonight. Thank you.
Yes, and for anybody watching this and in the audience, we'll have an agenda item on July 11th, which will be a letter in support of 2 grants for this project. And to reiterate what's been said before, given the grants we have to date, they require a surface crossing. So the surface crossing is what's going to go ahead, or there will be no project at all. So those are the 2 choices in front of us for the short term. So come July 11th, if you have questions or concerns about that. Any other public comment for tonight? All right, then close public comment. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 1 item on the consent agenda, the approval of the minutes from June 13th. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the June 13th,
Second.
13th meeting.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 7 carries 7-0. We are now on to the regular agenda.
Need the projector on.
And the first item on the agenda is a study session on land use policies and development approval process in the unincorporated San Mateo County Midcoast. Lisa Ketchum presenting. This is the second of 3 study sessions on planning processes and related issues in the Midcoast.
Oh, that way.
Is that too dark
No.
for anybody?
That's fine.
Lighting.
Okay, so land use policies and development approval process. This is the same thing you already said, right? Okay. This is session 2, study session 2. There's a link here for study session 1, which is kind of introductory. You can, this presentation I'm going to give tonight is posted on our homepage, and it has links throughout. If you open that PDF on our website, then the links will work for you. And sorry if this presentation is kind of wordy, but I prepared it so it would be a useful document on its own. So there you are. So the California Coastal Initiative, Prop 20, overwhelmingly passed by voters in 1972, was made permanent by the California Coastal Act of 1976. Coastal Act policies in the coastal zone protect public access to the shoreline, sensitive habitats, scenic resources, community character, productive agricultural lands, commercial fisheries, archaeological and cultural resources. They protect natural shorelines and minimize risk from coastal hazards, establish urban-rural boundaries, and direct new development into areas with adequate service to avoid wasteful sprawl. As we saw last time, we have an urban-rural boundary on Half Moon Bay and the Midcoast. That's what that's talking about. Prioritize coastal-dependent visitor-serving development. Provide lower-cost visitor-serving and recreational facilities. Assure new development has adequate public services and that new service capacity do not induce growth inconsistent with resource protection. And this last one, this is just to remind you, this is in the Coastal Act throughout the state. Highway 1 shall remain a scenic two-lane road in rural areas. For us here, that means south of Half Moon Bay, north of Montera, up to Pacifica. The California Coastal Commission administers the Coastal Act and has jurisdiction over land use and development regulations in the coastal zone. The local coastal program of the Coastal Act is supplemented by local coastal programs which are approved by the Coastal Commission and administered by local governments. San Mateo County's LCP update applies to the unincorporated areas of the coast side. It's pink on the map. It extends all the way to that blue line, probably right at the ridge line. Coastal cities, including Half Moon Bay, have their own local coastal programs. So you have the Coastal Act administered by the Coastal Commission, and then each local government has their own LCP, and that's all overseen by the Coastal Commission. San Mateo County Local Coastal Program was first certified in 1980 and has been amended various times. There was a major update for the Midcoast area undertaken from 1999 to 2012, a not insignificant amount of time. The purpose was to improve Coastal Act consistency, update baseline data and policies, and reduce appeals of what basically was out-of-scale development. Once again, there's a link takes you right to the LCP. City of Half Moon Bay has its own LCP, and there's a link to theirs. The boundaries, as I covered last time, the city limit is at Emirata and Alto Road, except for this disconnected cherry stem. Basically, Pillar Point RV Park, Beach House, and Sam's Chowder House are in the city of Half Moon Bay, which is governed by their LCP. Okay, we also, in the Midcoast, we have a residential growth rate limit. It's in the LCP. New residential construction is limited to 40 dwelling units per year. New second units are included in the annual limit. The total number of approved second units is limited to 466 in the coastal zone, the county's coastal zone. Coastal Act and LCP supersede the state's accessory dwelling unit law, which prohibits these limits. So they're both state laws, but the Coastal Act supersedes their what the legislature has recently done. So this limit is applied at the time building permits are issued. So as the calendar year goes along, if the limit should be reached, then nobody else gets a building permit until January 1st. New units with affordability restrictions can exceed the annual limit, but the growth rate 3-year average must not exceed 40 units per year. The LCP designates affordable housing as a priority land use for which water and sewer capacity is reserved. So then we have the actual numbers, the last few years of number of units that were approved. You can see it went up from 11, 24, 32, and then last year back down to 13.
So when was the water moratorium lifted?
The water moratorium, Montero Water and Sanitary had a moratorium for many years, and that was only lifted recently, in the last few years. Bill?
I'm guessing 5, but I'm not sure.
I think it was last year.
Oh, no,
Last year.
It was before last year.
Before last year.
It's
2 to 5.
3 to 5 years. Well, I'll ask Catherine.
There you go. So the local coastal program includes a land use plan and an implementation plan. The land use plan specifies the kinds and locations and intensity of allowable development. The implementation plan includes zoning designations and development rules to implement the land use plan. Amendments to the LCP land use plan or to the county zoning regulations for the coastal zone require certification by the Coastal Commission before they can take effect. I got 2 pages here showing the zoning districts. I'm not going to read through this, but basically it's a resource you can look. There's the code for the different districts, and then the list on the left shows what that means, and the link at the bottom takes you straight to the county zoning regulations, and they might look like a formidable document, but basically if you just scroll through the table of contents and you click on the one you want to see, it takes you right to that chapter. And this is southern part of the Midcoast here. So all development in the coastal zone requires a coastal development permit or an exemption. Development must comply with the policies of the LCP and the implementing ordinances. The definition of development is broad. It includes structures, basically any solid material on land, in or underwater. Includes grading of a significant amount, discharges, change in density or intensity of use, land division, and major removal of vegetation. So this map shows well, the pink area the Coastal Commission has direct permit jurisdiction. Basically, it's the ocean and tide lands. You can see it includes Pillar Point Marsh. It actually included a portion of the Big Wave project. And it includes the harbor there. So basically, they get their permits from the Coastal Commission, not from the county. Then the green area that's residential, and it's so single-family residential. It's called the categorical exclusion area. And it's exempt from CDP, but it does require a design review permit. So that's basically single-family homes. And then the blue area is the Coastal Commission appeals jurisdiction. So if the project is in that area, then you are able to appeal a county decision to the Coastal Commission. So basically it's between the sea and the first through public road, paralleling the sea, or within 300 feet of the inland extent of a beach or a coastal bluff, or within 100 feet of any wetland, estuary, or stream. That's where you get those blue lines going back along all the creeks. Also appealable to the Coastal Commission, major public works projects, and development requiring a use permit. That's not a permissible permitted use. So basically, if you have a zoning district and you go to that zoning ordinance, it'll say in there what uses are permitted in that district. And then you'll see some that are permitted with a use permit. So that is not a principal permitted use, and it could be appealed to the Coastal Commission. That's what it's saying. Okay, so we got to tackle this. This is all on one slide. Planning permit approval process. So separated into the staff review on the left and public process on the right. So the staff will accept the application. They will review it for zoning compliance and completeness. They will send referrals to reviewing agencies for comment. The building department, public works, fire, whatever is appropriate, the water sewer districts, and they're supposed to send them to us, and then others as warranted, environmental, well, whatever. Then staff determines if biological or geotechnical or coastal hazard traffic studies are required, and what level of CEQA review. That's the California Environmental Quality Act. Then, in some cases, a staff level permit is all that's needed, and that would be smaller amounts of grading, home improvement exception projects, second units, and CDPs that are not appealable to the Coastal Commission. Then for hearing level permits, the staff prepares the staff report for the hearing, and they also prepare the staff reports for any appeals. And then after the project is approved, they'll send notice of that to the Coastal Commission, and if it's appealable, so that they know there's an appeal period then that's open. So the public process, you have for large projects, and you might ask, what's a large project? Well, normally for residential, it's anything including 10 houses, but we have had several projects. It depends where these are. Like there was 3 houses proposed on Pillar Point Bluff, and then of course Valimar Bluff. There were much less than 10 houses, but the county did pre-application workshop. Or anything like, the Harbor Village RV Park, or, big stuff. So in that case, before a formal permit, application is submitted, they'll have a public workshop, and the applicant will present the project, and everybody gets to say what they think. And then the staff will compile a report with the different agencies' comments and the public comments, and that's all there for the applicant to mull over before they might want to revise their project or whatever. But it's a document that's then available. And then, so assuming they submit an application, then the MCC, as I said before, is one of the agencies that gets these early referrals. Now, the majority of referrals we don't comment on, particularly if it's just a single-family home and we know it's going to go to design review anyway, and there's no environmental, it's not next to the creek or something like that. But if we do want to comment, we'll have that on the agenda, and the public can comment at the meeting. They can, we're just advisory. We would submit comments to the planner, and the public can do that as well, or speak here at the meeting. And then the project, the next stage is it goes to, if it has a residential component, it goes to the Coastside Design Review Committee. Did I leave that out? That it has to have a residential component?
No, it's there.
Oh, okay.
Third bullet.
Going blind. Okay, so then once again, the public can submit written and oral comments at that stage. And then if there is a if it's determined that a secret document is required, if it's a mitigated negative declaration or a full environmental impact report, that will be published online and for a certain amount of time, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe more, depending how complex it is. And the public has that amount of time to review it and submit their written comment to the project planner. Then finally, you reach a decision maker, the Planning Commission. There's a staff report, there's a hearing, and the public can submit written or oral comment at that meeting. Then, if you don't like the decision, you can appeal it to the Board of Supervisors, or if it's appealable to the Coastal Commission, you can go directly to them. But this is limited to people who have participated or communicated their concerns to local government. You can't chime in after all this has happened without having said anything and expect to be able to appeal the project. So I just have a short list of some current projects that are in review, Valimar Bluff, and once again, there's links here if there's information on our webpage so that you can see what's been going on. The Harborview Inn, 14-room expansion seems kind of stalled out. It hasn't been a lot of activity on the online permit site. Same thing with the hotel at Main and 7th. Arbor Lane is cooking right along. They've had their mitigated neg deck published, and we submitted comments on that. I don't know where they're going to go from that. And then Harbor Village is working their way through. At some point, we'll hear from them again. And then, as you all know, Cypress Point Affordable Housing has, they've been through the pre-application process, but they haven't actually submitted their formal application yet. This project would require an LCP amendment, which I think the county plans to do as a first step, which is required because the zoning is currently at a higher density and they want it to be lower density and whatever. That will, the zoning amendment will go to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors and the Coastal Commission. And at all those places, there's opportunity for public input. Then there's a couple of things here that the CDP, sometimes this surprises people when something starts to get built and they say, well, where did that come from? So this, I just wanted to call out to you, there's these two 3-story mixed-use buildings in Princeton, right there on the, well, it's between the bed and breakfast and the Mavericks Event Center. They're all approved, and they're working on their building permit. They just haven't got their building permit yet. But as you can see, the first number in these PLN numbers, 2006, that project was applied for in 2006, and it was appealed to the Coastal Commission, so it's taken a long time. And then, of course, there's Big Wave, which has been approved. Their CDP's approved, but they don't have a building permit yet. Now, here's some pending long-range planning projects. Plan Princeton is a comprehensive planning update of land use plans, development policies, and zoning regulations in the greater Princeton area, as on the colored part of that map. And it commenced in 2013, and we saw this preferred land use plan in 2015, and we have heard no more since then. And I reached out to the planner just last week, and she said tentatively there'll be public outreach early next year. And there's a link there. I wanted to, even though I don't have anything new to report on these projects, I think it's important to keep reminding people that this is out there, because people forget all about it. And I think it will be a challenge each time when they finally do come forward to kind of go back over and, well, here's all what we covered before, because it's been so long, people forget. It's unfortunate. Another pending long-range planning project is Connect the Coast Side. In 2012, the Midcoast LCP update required this comprehensive transportation management plan, which would address cumulative traffic impacts of projected new development at LCP build-out, including policies to offset and mitigate for significant cumulative impacts of residential development on public access to the beach. In 2014, Connect the Coast Side started to develop this plan. And in 2016, we got the draft report of recommendations of system improvements, alternative transportation standards. It evaluates substandard lot merger, lot retirement, and traffic mitigation fees for new development. To date, no final draft plan. So that's over 2 years now, and I did ask the planner last week if he had any news on when that will be coming forward, and he hasn't gotten back to me. So there's that. Everybody's waiting with bated breath. And then another zoning change that the MCC requested, an update for the neighborhood commercial. So we requested this in 2017, and the county didn't include them in the 2018-2019 work plan due to other priorities for staff time. So we did ask for the update for the neighborhood commercial because it has virtually no development standards to it. And then also for this definition of building height method of measurement for neighborhood commercial, for resource management, and for planned agriculture. There's 3 districts that lack this definition, and when it's not there in the ordinance, the county defaults to this averaging method, which is much more lenient. And basically, we've realized this when we saw this hotel proposed at 7th Street on the highway in Montera, and the building height maximum is 28 feet, and yet the front of that building is 36 feet above the highway. And that's apparently okay. So we're trying to get this added. And, you know, as I said, we are told staff is busy. Obviously, they must be busy because these other projects have been stalled too. But anyway, just a reminder that that's in the queue. So I have these other links here for you. The, of course, the MCC page, and also the county planning. They have one link here, and on that page you can choose from everything you need to know about planning. You can go to the zoning regs or whatever. And then the online permit center is something that I use extensively, and I'll admit it's not very user-friendly, but you could try. Basically, if you know the PLN number for a project, or if you know the parcel number, you can go there and poke around and find out everything you could want to know, pretty much, short of going to the county and looking in the files. And then the GIS site can be a challenge too, but the maps are pretty cool. Some of them I got for this presentation in there. And then don't want to confuse you by confusing the Midcoast with Half Moon Bay, but once again, separately, Half Moon Bay's planning department, there's a link for that. And then also, I know everybody's interested in the 2 hotel proposals in Half Moon Bay. Basically, Half Moon Bay has a page on those with updates, and you can sign up to get email updates on the project. So that's it on that, and I just, that we're planning to do a third study session at our next meeting, and this would be on transportation planning and projects. And I don't want everybody to get excited, because I think you got a hint of that here tonight. There's no real rollout here or something new, but I want to kind of go back and cover from the 2012 safety mobility studies and the crossing project and what has happened to bring us where we are today, just to remind people how we got here and what's finished, what's left hanging, and all of that. That's what next meeting will be about.
I did want to add one thing, which you might want to add to that list of links on that last page, which is there's a county page where you can sign up to receive various agendas, including board of supervisors, planning commission, park and rec commission, zoning hearing officer meetings, if you want to know about things that are going before the zoning hearing officer. It does add up to a lot of emails if you sign up for all of them, but if you are trying to follow a project, I highly recommend you sign up for those, at least for the duration of the project.
I'll put that link on here, and I guess I should put the link to Half Moon Bay's newsletters. Those are good.
Yes, those are also very good. Well, thank you. Let's start with any clarifying questions from the council.
Can we have the lights?
A brief discussion from the council, and then see if anybody in the audience wants to comment.
I think I saw a question already out
Yeah,
there.
but we'll come back to the audience. I want to keep it brief in the council first, just in case we cover what the audience is concerned about, and then we'll go to the audience. Any clarifying questions from anybody? Any real, Dan?
Yeah, Lisa, can you go into a little more detail about the process it would take to appeal to the California Coastal Commission?
So I've never done that, but are you, so first of all, you have to have standing. You have to be an aggrieved person. In other words, you need to have spoken at a public hearing or submit a written comment to preferably to the decision-making body, to make sure you're on record as having standing.
Right, I understand. So
And-
you're not coming out of a crack in the wall, the 11th hour.
Right, and ideally you would have commented on the same issues you want to appeal on, so you're not all of a sudden bringing up something new. And just to point out that the Midcoast Community Council cannot appeal a county decision to the Coastal Commission, because we're advisory to the Board of Supervisors. But if an individual council member wanted to do that on its own, what you do is you have to comment as an individual to the Planning Commission, for example. Not as an MCC member, but you need to say clearly, I'm so-and-so from such and such a street, and here's my comment. Or I was the chief author of the MCC's letter, and I agree with everything it said, and as an individual. So a member of the public doesn't have that handicap, but you do have to get your word in ahead. And as far as the process, the paperwork, whatever, with the Coastal Commission, their website has it, all the instructions laid out for you. Dave, are you,
Anybody else have any brief comments or questions, clarifying questions? Go ahead.
The section about CEQA documents, those are prepared by whom?
the county? Or if it's quite involved, like an EIR, a consultant will be hired to do it. And in that case, the applicant pays for that, but the consultant is hired by the county.
Okay.
And project developer pays for it, but the county sets it up. Anything else from the council? Okay, anybody in the audience have a question? Please go up to the podium so the video will pick you up. Give us your name.
Hi, I'm Beverly Garrity, and I'm a member of the Coastal Design Review Committee, and I'm also a citizen of Montero. Lisa, thank you. This is a really well-organized and informative document, and I really appreciate it. I had a few questions I think you might be able to answer these questions. Just a question comment on the EIR docs. Do you perchance know what those are running in terms of cost? It's an applicant cost these days.
I don't think we've had any EIRs since the big wave, have we? I'm trying to think. I don't know. I mean, that's not something we would necessarily be told.
Okay, so you haven't come across that.
No.
All right. A question I had on your doc on the page with the Midcoast project area, the Midcoast LCP update 2012, where it describes the northern city limit of Half Moon Bay. Do you happen to know how that was determined to split Miramar?
It's the original 1959 incorporation of the city of Half Moon Bay. It hasn't changed since.
So basically, at the time when Half Moon Bay was incorporated, Marauder Road connected all the way down to Coronado.
Mm-hmm.
And so the city limit was in the middle of the road. And so they had this cherry semi went all the way up to included Sam's Chowder House. Well, since then, Marauder Road fell into the ocean. So now it's just this northern portion that's still there.
Okay.
So the fact that the little area we call Miramar, I mean, I think the people in Half Moon Bay there, did they consider they're in Miramar too? I don't know how it works, but I could see how they would feel like in the same neighborhood because they're right across the street from each other. Why they didn't incorporate at Medio Creek, at least there's some natural division there, but that's not what they did.
Okay. Thank you. The next page, Midcoast residential growth rate limit. You have a number for 466 for ADUs in the coastal zone. Over what time period is that?
That's at
total?
LCP build out. That's the highest it can go as the LCP is currently written.
All right. Let's see. All right, I think that was it for specific questions and just an overall question as to inspiration. Why did you start this effort and create these docs and do these presentations? Where did it begin?
Why now?
Yeah.
I think because of next door, because of people commenting and not, they're disturbed about something and they don't know what jurisdiction they live in, they don't know what the rules are, they don't know who the decision makers are. They really need information. And obviously they're not here tonight, but that's why I created this as like a living document that hopefully when the next time you see somebody needing this information, you can point them to it on our website and it will be of use. And, we can update it as if certain things happen and we can keep it up to date.
So we can actually use Nextdoor. What you're suggesting is, given that feedback, Nextdoor can actually be used as a forum for disseminating any kind of government or public information.
Well, I would qualify that by saying it is. I found it useful for teaching moments, like when you see a thread going along and they're obviously missing one key piece, and I can just insert that into the conversation, and that helps. But mostly, it's useful to point people to the website where they can get accurate information. I see, so we have a Facebook page and there is Nextdoor, and I can look at our website and see who's going to what page. And I can predict something that I post on Nextdoor or Facebook, whether there's going to be a spike or whether it's going to be And local government is but if I post on Romeo Pier being taken down, or here's some erosion pictures, oh man, it's like over 100, 200 in a day. And the actual post on Nextdoor, whether how many thanks it gets, has no bearing or relationship to the people who just click the link and go to the website. And we try to have the website there with all the issues described, and the source documents are there so that you can get a brief overview or dig deeper if you want. And did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, yes, I'm finding these very comprehensive, really helpful, and I hope the public makes use of these docs. Thank you.
Also, I think at least myself and another community member kind of requested this. Am I right?
Carl said we should have a workshop once a year and go over local government. Yeah, you can blame this on Carl.
Or you can thank Carl.
Here to defend myself. Actually, Brandon had brought up some sort of community education ideas.
Yeah, from
At
the
a-
retreat idea.
Yes, at a Midcoast Council meeting, and I just jumped onto the tail end of that. And I've been involved with this stuff heavily since the bypass was being fought over. But even though, and it took me about 10 years of living on the coast to find out sort of who was in control of what and so forth. And in the bypass it was the most massive effort ever on the coast side among community members. We were turning out 400 some odd community members to coastal commission meetings to testify on this. So and heavily against the bypass also, much to the dismay of the people who are in charge, like the county politicians, county supervisors, and so forth. And we fought the bypass like crazy. But that kind of got me involved in seeing who was in charge of what. And actually, I got on a few boards after getting involved in the bypass stuff, in boards of sort of local environmental committees and so forth and so on, sort of saw how they were wired and what their philosophies were and what their main pushes were and so forth. But in following this, my interest in coming to these meetings all the time, and I'm supposed to be sort of a gadfly or something, is in my own quality of life and the quality of life of my family. And I will come to a Midcoast Council meeting or have something to say about something only on the basis that whatever time I spend here is a small fraction of the time I'm going to be inconvenienced or have to earn more money or make greater income to pay for something that's going on or whatever. And this doesn't get through to people. Ever since I've lived on the coast, people complain mightily about things that I agree with them on way too late to have any say in what's going on. And so the value of this, and I hope it will be used ever more extensively, is the minute you start to see people popping up against something and so forth, point out to them these places on the website. Even if it is a living document, it's what's going on right now. And keep it objective, keep it non-political, but just to make people aware of where they fit into this whole milieu over here. Because it's like you were saying, Lisa, it's very easy for people to jump up and not even understand whether the city of Half Moon Bay or the county or some special district or whatever is involved in a particular issue that somebody's agitated about. So I'm very happy that this has been done, and I want to thank Lisa for doing this. And it'll be something that I hope many people will instantly, when these questions start to come up, will point to this Or when it's too late to do something about something, point to this as point to these things as where you might have become involved in the process, where you might have mobilized your neighbors or like-minded people to become involved. And you have to mobilize quite a few to ever have enough pressure on anything, to get anything changed. So that's just my little personal spiel about this. But I think this is really important stuff for anybody who cares about the quality of their life on the coast side or their living situation, how they are getting along day to day in their lives in their community. This is what determines a lot of it. Okay, enough lecture.
Thanks, Carl.
Bill Keough, Moss Beach. Thank you, Lisa, for a very thorough listing of things we all should know. Two questions. I texted Catherine. She said 08 or 09, but that would be 10 years, and that seems like too long, so I'll go back and look it up. Maybe texts never come out clear anyway, so maybe she misinterpreted my.
I think it was between the first big wave and the second big wave project, because the first project they were going to use well water, and then by the second project they had Montero water.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be like 5 years ago. Anyway, we can nail it down.
Yeah, I remember trying to find it on the website.
Call Clements. They'll know. I mean, this is.
But
not-
Well, I can get it because I've got the documents. They had to have their whole plan certified by the Coastal Commission. It took quite a while from when they had to test the well. I mean, they found the well, but then it took a long time to get that all settled out and what it could pump and
They had a false start too, I think. That suddenly the Coastal Commission said, wait a minute. And then
yeah, they are very
Right.
careful.
Yes, so I do think it was like about 5 years.
It's a public works plan, and I think they probably have it posted, but I can look, I've got that on my computer.
Okay, and you said you had one other thing?
Yes, the other actual is more of a question. I seem to recall maybe a year ago, last summer, maybe 2 years now, there was part of a trailer bill that Jerry Brown was trying to push through that was going to weaken the CEQA process. And I don't know if that ever happened.
It did not.
It did not, okay.
There was another attempt this year. It did not go through either.
Okay. Something to keep an eye on because, they'll eventually come back and win, so.
To some extent, the second.
To Carl's point, we gotta keep stalling as long as we can.
To some extent, the second Uden changes at the state level were part of that,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
not directly.
That's it. Thank you.
Any other members of the public want to speak or ask a question? Sure.
Dolores Silva. I've always wondered how anybody can possibly track the second units, but it's in the LCP. Is there any effort or is it just a black hole?
Yes, there are
or?
efforts, but it's not known because we have a number that are not permitted, that is, they're not legal.
Right.
And the county is in the process of allowing legalization of second units that were not permitted in the outside the coastal zone. They're holding off on the coastal zone until they see how that goes. But the belief currently is that there are in the vicinity of 400 units total in the Midcoast.
Already. It seems like they're everywhere.
Did you say 400 there?
I did.
How do you guess that?
That came from the county at one point. It was an informal survey. I don't know how accurate it is. Let me rephrase that. It was a guess based on what they had seen.
Yeah, because this 466 at build-out, that's the entire coastal zone. That's just not the mid-coast for second units. I mean, it goes down to Pescadero. So, so they're counting them now, or at least presumably they have a way to count them as they approve them. But I don't know how they'll get that total number because if they don't have a permit, how would you know?
And I believe that 466 is probably second units that are physically separate from the primary dwelling. And what that is, second units that are inside the dwelling are probably not included in that, but I don't know.
That's a good question, because we deal with design review, what constitutes a second unit?
Well, it's
Reviewing a lot of-
very clear in state law and county ordinance now.
Yeah,
It was
we're
not
doing a lot
clear
of
in the
separate
past.
entrance development. Mhm.
So I don't know what the LCP definition of second unit is.
And anyway, this has been tremendously useful, but the MCC website is tremendously useful. And I certainly go there often. But thank you, and I am still very concerned about that second unit thing. Second question, you went over how in the Cypress Point development, that they will have to, as a first step, get the parcel rezoned from what it is now, which is, I think, medium-high density to medium density or something. What exactly is that process? You said the Board of Supervisors has to.
All I know is on that long-range plan, that two-year plan, which I think you have, and in the chart, it says that they're gonna do the LCP update as the first step, and there's a box there that says county staff has to investigate da-da-da-da-da, I can't remember it, and then talk to the Coastal Commission, figure it out, and then, and I don't know what stage, I don't know how much of that has been done yet, but.
So that kind of stuff doesn't involve like another pre-app or anything like that?
No.
This is just strictly a separate process?
I don't know for sure. I would think that they would need to submit their formal application so that they have the parameters for this LCP update. But I don't know. I have not asked Steve, I guess, would be the one. I haven't asked. I figure, we'll see it when we see it.
I know sometimes.
It's not going to happen behind closed doors.
But it's amazing what questions you don't know to ask in this process. That's one of the things.
And to be clear, it's not obvious that Mid-Penn has to do that. They want to.
Okay. And I guess there's probably a few reasons I can think of why that would be a good
Sure,
idea.
there's plenty of possible reasons.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else from the audience? Questions, comments? Anybody else in the council want to make any comments? Claire?
In terms of being able to refer people to these documents, the link that you've put on the first page of this to session number 1, is that the appropriate link to use to refer to people for that?
Okay, that link takes you to that first study session PDF.
Okay.
That's all it takes you to. Basically, in the long range of things, where I have that posted on our homepage is at the top of the right column under focus topics, and it'll be on the top. And then yes, each section, study session, I'll have it right there together, so you can just tell people that it's on the home page in the right column. It'll be there under focus topics.
But not forever.
The plan is to have it for the long term.
It'll always be up, that's the one.
Well, I don't know, always, it's like, for the next year. How about that?
Okay.
Till we come up with something better.
I thought maybe there would be new news that would replace it or something, but it should be easily located.
News is on the left side, so it'll be if something major happens.
Okay.
I imagine eventually we'll move it to planning if we decide to move it off the home page.
Yeah, the left column is news blogs that push it down in the column. The right column there is manually input, and when you see them change positions, because I manually moved them and I moved something else to the top, so I'm going to keep those at the top.
Okay.
I will also add, since nobody else has any comments, that if you want to be involved in these things, 4 of us on the MCC are up for re-election in November. You can choose to run against us, and you can be part of it. And I don't think any of us would feel particularly angry at you if you ran against us and won. Similarly, Half Moon Bay, for anybody watching this who's inside the Half Moon Bay city limits, has 3 council members up for election in November. Filing period opens July 10th, and if I remember correctly, closes on August 10th, unless none of the incumbents file, in which case it gets extended 5 days. In case you want to wait and see.
I thought it was July 16th that it opened.
I may have it wrong. I thought it was July 10th in the most recent thing I saw, but I won't swear to it. You can contact me directly if you're interested. All right, anything else on this subject before we move on? All right, sure.
Just, I heard mention of CEQA issues. Can you give me a quick bullet point on what the CEQA issues are?
The CEQA is all the environmental issues.
Right.
So we've had houses that are inside what we see as inside the limits of the creeks. There have been other projects like Big Wave that were on the edge of marsh areas. Valmar Bluff potentially might have had some of those issues, but with the changes is not. So it's a California law, and it governs all the environmental impact reporting. So anytime you see EIR or NEGDEC, that's all related to CEQA.
So the issues that you're saying, the changes that you're hoping to see are to address these violations that were...
What changes?
Somebody mentioned CEQA issues.
Sure, go ahead. Bill.
I don't remember it. I really need to go back and Google it, and when I find the right links, I'll send it to you.
What are you, what?
On the trailer bill where they're trying to water down
Oh, that.
the issues around that. And Carl just reminded me a couple of things there, and he probably could speak to it better than I can, but basically what's going on is because of the housing crisis, they're using all sorts of ways to manipulate, to get around things like CEQA, things in the LCP, because of the crisis at hand. And so you have to be careful when they wave that kind of flag, because it usually means they're going to undermine processes and procedures that a lot of us over our lifespan have been fighting to keep the coast side, reasonably away from heavy development. And I can't remember all the detail. I remember
That's okay.
there's a letter.
That's all I need.
Well, one thing, if you want to Google it, just go and look for the Council of Cities was really upset about this a year or 2 years ago, and I got a letter from them because it was undermining what local jurisdictions could actually control within their own environment. The state was going to overrule all that, and that means they're doing a big land grab at the state level.
Thank you.
And I'm probably wrong on half of that, but
No, I think you're basically right, and as with anything, you can always look to see who's supporting and who's objecting to something, and you get a lot of information. Carl, go ahead.
One easy way to understand this is that on the federal level, most of the environmental stuff, including the need for EIRs, EISs, EIRs, and so forth, is governed by NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. And that comes into play, of course, wherever. CEQA is like a California version of NEPA, but it's our own state's environmental, so California Environmental Quality Act. And it has lots of statutes and so forth related to California, and sometimes close to the federal guidelines, which must also be followed, sometimes specific to California.
Which takes precedence?
What?
Which overrides which?
In
California,
neither one
CEQA
overrides the other, really.
is normally.
Yeah, but in California, you must conform to CEQA. That's why with all of the so-called housing crisis stuff, affordable housing, this, that, and the other thing, this is a real bleeding hearts justification for getting rid of some of these long-standing environmental policies in this state.
So I think an easier way to understand what the CEQA process looks like is to just look at a negative declaration. So on these project pages, Valamar Bluff had a mitigated negative declaration. I think they're going to have to redo it and recirculate it. And Arbor Lane as well because it's on the coastal bluff. So you can kind of see the process. They have a whole checklist chart they have to go through, and is there a significant impact on this issue? And if there is, how are they going to mitigate it? And then they say, well, with the mitigation, it's not significant. That's always the outcome. But you have to look at the mitigations and think, now, is this real? Is this really going to, has this really made it insignificant? So anyway, that gives you that's basically all I know of, is seeing them. And, we commented on the one for Arbor Lane.
And the other thing on this subject I wanted to add is the city of Half Moon Bay is in the middle of doing its updated land use plan, as well as its general plan, and they're very closely tied together. The land use plan is temporarily on hold. They decided to move forward with the general plan first. But
I thought it was the other way around.
What's that?
I thought it was the other way around.
Nope, they changed.
Again?
They changed when the new council got elected and some of these other issues came up. I think like 6-8 months ago they changed priorities. But anyway, so that's another way to be involved. Even if you are not in the city of Half Moon Bay as a voter, you can still attend those meetings, you can still comment on them. They are very open. The process has been pretty well run from my perspective. All right, I'm going to close that agenda item. We'll move on to agenda item 4B, hazards of Highway 1 informal direct vehicle access. And this again is Lisa Ketchum. Fire away, Lisa.
So the desired outcome of this agenda item is that the MCC requests that Caltrans close off informal direct Highway 1 access at Surfers Beach on the east side at the dirt lot and in Moss Beach on the west side between California and Virginia. These are 3 policies and recommendations that we've seen here before. The Highway 1 Safety Mobility Study recommends limit highway access openings to improve safety and mobility. The local coastal program has a policy to limit new driveway connections to the state highway, and Caltrans considers Highway 1 in our area an expressway, and these are their, this is from their procedures manual. Access openings kept to a minimum. Parcels that have access to another public street, like they're on the corner, are not allowed to access the highway directly. Or limit access openings to 1 on the highway. So we've had several agenda items on Moss Beach Chevron. We've been working on this since 2014, actually, but this explains the problem. At the Chevron station, you have this wide open frontage because they removed the landscape buffer, and vehicles turn right or left into or out of the gas station anywhere along that block. They cross all the pavement markings, the turn lane, the double yellow lines, instead of using the side street. As we all know, with the traffic, vehicle movement is often sudden and quick during gaps in traffic, with multiple vehicles moving at once in unpredictable directions. Big trucks block sight distance from the side streets. And basically, it's just a hazardous no man's land on that whole shoulder area. If you're a pedestrian, it's like really intimidating.
Did you take a look at Montera too?
Not in this, nobody's brought up an issue in Montera. This is direct highway, this is direct access from private property, not from a side street.
Oh, strictly private property?
Yeah,
Not from the
where
side?
this is a business frontage here between the side streets that we're talking about. And in the bottom picture,
It could be an issue in Montera as well with,
Okay, can I ask that you hold that until we get to the comment period?
sure.
okay, so the red line in the bottom picture is the current opening that's there. And it's 144 feet wide, and what we're asking for is to close that off so the yellow line becomes the opening. You still have the side street, Vermont. You can see in the top picture the fuel truck came in on Vermont, went through the gas station and went out the other way. They don't need that wide open frontage. And you can see the car on the left that's coming out, going across all lanes there to go north. And the smaller truck that's at the gas pump in the picture, after he got done filling up, he turned directly out on the highway and did the same thing instead of going over to Vermont. So anyway, we've asked for this change, and we'll see how that goes. But this is now about this block between California and Virginia, and the red line is what we're proposing. Close the vehicle highway access along the edge of the paved shoulder, the restaurant on-site parking access from Virginia, and the informal parking in the Caltrans right-of-way, and that you can see there, can still be accessed via Virginia and California. And then at Surfers Beach, at the dirt parking lot, close vehicle highway access from the dirt lot and Burnip Strip. The berm that used to block vehicles has worn away, and the dirt parking lot is accessed from Obispo. That's my presentation.
I'm going to add one thing from the last GCSD meeting. They voted to put a line of logs along the GCSD property line here, here, and here. So parking will be contained there. It won't stop anybody from driving from here to here, but they won't be able to drive through to here.
Well, that might be counterproductive because you're going to lose, we need to close that off. It just makes a dangerous area more dangerous to have the vehicle.
GCSD has tried to do that, and Caltrans so far has not been willing to do so. The berm was put in, for those who don't know, during the Surfers Beach riprap project, and Caltrans was supposed to clean that up and declined to do so.
Well, my goal with this, if the council approves this request, is then to take this presentation and shop it around. Obviously, we have nobody at Caltrans we can call up and say, and I think if we get Supervisor Horsley to support it and figure out who has how to get this done, it may take some creative thinking. But first step is if the council supports that we make this request.
Yeah, I think also working with Senator Hill's office as well.
Right.
It's a state agency.
Yep, definitely a viable path. All right, going to go for council clarifying questions first, then council comments. Any clarifying questions? Brandon and Dan?
So it looks like people go to use this access for parking, is that right? Like if, I mean, it's particularly, I remembered several years ago, 4th of July, all this whole side of Highway 1 is filled with parked cars, and that parking lot is used.
So I'm sorry, what's the question you're looking to get answered?
So people won't be able to park there anymore?
No, this doesn't stop any
It doesn't,
parking.
yeah, it doesn't prevent any parking along the highway, and the parking lot is still available from Obispo, as it always was.
But if GCSD puts the lock there,
Okay,
will
so that's a GCSD issue, it's not a clarifying question. So we'll hold that for comments. Dan, you had a clarifying question?
Yes, I just wanted you to elaborate a little further. Specifically, we're going to take each one at a time. So we'll start with Surfers Beach, this situation right here. Specifically about that, what is hazardous?
You want to tackle down this?
This page. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to follow these policies and make the highways safer and make it for all users.
Okay.
That's why we're doing this.
Spirit of safety, so what about that situation is unsafe?
So I personally have seen trucks and cars come zooming up over the berm and onto the highway, and that's definitely
Well,
unsafe.
that's a driver behavior.
That's a
right?
safety issue.
That could happen anywhere, right?
Well, but
Not if there's
At
no
any-
highway entrance.
Pardon?
It can't happen there if they can't drive through it. If they can't get on the highway
I'm
there,
just
it
saying,
won't happen.
that behavior could happen right through a stop sign, could happen through a red light,
Right, but we're
could happen
talking,
anywhere.
but we're talking specifically about access to the highway where there's not supposed to be access.
Okay, so I'll agree with you. If a four-wheel drive vehicle was hauling through there at 30 miles an hour, got airborne, and ran right into the highway, I agree with
That's
you.
not what I'm talking about.
Okay, we'll
They
be,
just, people on the highway do not expect traffic to come in at a 90-degree angle to the highway where there is no connecting road or driveway. And that's what happens.
well, cars park there and then
But they don't come out
They
at a
just go-
90-degree angle across
They
the
just
highway.
go in the same direction they're
I've
headed.
seen trucks parked, there's one right in the picture there at 90
Okay, Dan,
degrees.
let me be really clear. I'm talking about,
No, I know what you're talking
for
about.
example,
You're
if
talking about
this
the white
car here
Like truck.
came across here and turned south on
I
Highway
know,
1.
but
speaking of that,
specifically your
white
issue
pickup
was a
truck.
car coming out at 90 degrees. And-
That truck
Okay,
came
so,
from
so
the
that's a
parking
clarifying
lot.
question. I've answered it. We'll discuss it further later.
Okay,
So any other
I need to
clarifying questions?
I need to clarify that that truck came out of the parking lot and is poised at the edge of the road.
So that's an example.
you can't
He at
cross
least
it.
stopped.
That truck couldn't have come through.
The white truck.
The white truck
Yeah,
Just
there's a burn.
came up from the parking
a
lot.
rail.
I was there, I
There's a-
saw it, I took a picture.
So
Okay.
it's this right here, Dan. Okay,
Okay.
any other clarifying questions?
So, yeah, what would you expect to see?
The red line
What would you?
should be made impassable. I don't care, logs, dirt, whatever.
As it used to be a 2.5-foot drop off that nobody could drive over.
Yeah, I remember that. And,
That's one possibility.
okay.
All right,
We're not talking about a K-rail. It sounds like you just said that you don't really care at all. What if they put a K-rail there? Concrete structure. Would that be okay with you?
I don't think
I'm
this is,
asking these questions because,
okay, so Dan, we're getting into comments, not clarifying questions. So I'm gonna hold that until after the audience. Does anybody else have a clarifying question of the council?
okay, so the second part of the question at the El Gran Amigo. So you're saying that a vehicle coming out at crossing that red line, let's say, you're saying would be hazardous solely on the basis that a car driving down Highway 1 would not expect a car to cross that red line. And that is why it's hazardous?
yes.
And that's why it's Caltrans and others have that policy.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna hold council comments until after the audience. Anybody in the audience have a comment or question they want to ask? Go ahead.
Beverly Garrity. I didn't know that regulation existed for highways, and I'm really glad to hear it because I've witnessed many accidents in Montera strictly on the basis of cars not expecting, cars on Highway 1, northbound and southbound, not expecting to see vehicles pulling out because there's no stop sign, there's no yield sign, there's no light, there's just no warning. And the crashes are T-bone crashes. They come from a number of places in Montera, every possible commercial entity, actually. The corner 24-hour store with gas station is one. Another one is Here Comes the Sun Coffee House. And the third is the Army-Navy store. And I believe all of these have access to the road above instead of Highway 1 to exit that commercial property. And in the case of the 24-hour market, they can come out on 8th Street first as an option. So please add that to this request it seems to be parallel with,
Can I reply?
Sure.
So the thing is, if the business has a long-standing access point that customers use, and, I mean, I would have to go down and look to see,
you should
because
know, 'cause
what's difficult.
8th Street is long-standing for the 24-hour.
The gas station is different. It's on the corner, you need, the fuel truck has to go through there. And that's why we didn't ask for the Chevron station to close off the whole thing.
No, it
We
wouldn't be
left part of it.
a whole thing. There's options to each and every one of these businesses. There's the second option that is currently in use. To each of these businesses I just mentioned, there's two. One is Highway 1, and the other is the secondary options that are in use.
Right, but you're asking to take away what is legitimate highway access. Their address is on Highway 1. The neighborhood mart actually has a relatively small
I see.
opening.
And
And here
the-
comes the sun, they're literally their only access.
So the gas station
Yes.
in Moss Beach, that access is not that address is not
See,
Highway 1?
the thing is, they have a concrete curb and all that, they got permitted for. And so it's like they're grandfathered, whereas in the case with the Chevron station, they, without permits, they came and took out the whole landscaping buffer. And at the,
I see.
at Gran Amigo, we're talking about not involving the restaurant at all. They don't have to spend any money at all. This would be just a Caltrans curb or whatever there. They could still use the right-of-way for parking and all that, so it wouldn't disrupt them.
Same
And
for
as far
these
as
three
Surfers
businesses?
Beach,
Right, and so
Like-
the Chevron station was built with the requirement that they block off part of the access. And they did, and then they ripped it out without permit.
Is part of the issue too that these places you're citing are relatively small access places, and the two we're looking at in Moss Beach take up the entire block? The magnitude is,
Well, these three together take up the entire block.
that may be a point.
And the same for the 24-hour store, that's half.
but
of
there
the
are a
block.
lot of people who have driveways onto the highway. We're not closing them all off. Like I say, we picked these three.
Not in Montera.
Yes, there are quite a few on the west side that are direct.
Oh, this is true. This is true. I see, so
We should
it's
try.
not a real
And
possibility.
the Army-Navy store only has access from Highway 1 road-wise. Here comes the sun, there's that informal dirt lot behind it, but,
I see, so they don't quite fit the profile.
yeah, I mean, we can certainly look at them, but they're a different situation than the other ones we're looking at.
It has to be prepared like this. If you're gonna submit this request, Caltrans wants the map with the line, and they want it all laid out for them, and we don't have that for Montera. This is the first we've heard of this issue. Whereas at our last meeting on.
Which surprises me, because that very situation has been the cause of many accidents.
Yeah, well, nobody's brought it to us, and whereas
Yeah.
at our meeting last time on the Chevron station, we got lots of comments from the community on that, and also the
Mhm.
Taqueria.
Right.
And then that was when Surfers Beach was brought up, so we went out, did the research, put this together. If
Can we
you know.
solicit comments for Montera? Can MCC
Sure,
solicit?
I mean, anybody that you have, that you or any of your neighbors want to submit comments to, by all means do so.
Yeah, and you can,
We'll look
So-
into it further, and we can
Should I do
amend this
it, or do
document.
you guys do it?
I think what the first step is, you need to lay out here, you need to take some pictures and with the aerial and draw on the situation so you can see what alternatives they have. Like on Surfers Beach, it shows
Sure.
the other access that they have, and where the closure is proposed and why that won't leave them high and dry, you know.
Okay, so it was a public initiated effort, not an
This-
MCC initiated effort?
I did this.
Yeah, but the idea comes from public comments. And we're certainly willing to include Montera in that. And you don't have to do all the research. We have had accident reports from the CHP, and in terms of injury accidents at least, there have been almost none in Montera. So if you have other information, that would be very helpful.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Lisa, thank you so much for your patience in continuing to move those two pieces forward in Moss Beach. My name is Chris Lang. I'm a resident of Moss Beach and on the Design Review Committee, and I live on California, near the, if you can go to the El Gran Amigo slide. Dan, one of the things, what I'm hearing, the concern is sort of where is the danger in this piece? And I really want to help you understand where it is in this one. If you take first of all, if you just take a look at the red line that's proposed, there have been times before where multiple people are leaving El Gran Amigo at the same time. So not only are you driving 45 to 55 miles an hour down an area where you don't anticipate any traffic coming out, you could have 2 or 3 cars coming out of that dirt stretch at the same time. If you were to pull out of that image, you would see that at California, right here, there's another little gem of a traffic hazard right here, because you've got a street here, 45 to 55 mile an hour traffic here. You've got the police, the sheriff's substation here. You've got an ambulance routinely parked at the end of the street. You've got this access here, a whole flood of opportunity for people to come out here. We've seen people ripping out of this thing at 40 miles an hour, or even worse still, barreling down the highway at 55 miles an hour, and then, you know, like, oh my God, I was supposed to turn there sort of movements that you see in this neighborhood would shock you. So, and then again, just to take a broader look at this sort of 2 or 3 block radius, this is a cluster in and of itself, but then you just go down a couple of blocks and you're at the Chevron station. So you've got all this activity. Just these plots in and of themselves seem deserving of some kind of measure to prevent people from pouring out onto the highway. But when you think about where they are in proximity to each other, with the ambulances, the sheriff, the exit for Moss Beach, or yeah, it is Moss Beach, the fire station, just above the highway, and all of the stuff that comes funneling into this 2 block radius, you really begin to see how it's not a quiet country road that we're trying to just prevent traffic. It's people barreling down the highway with a lot of really important emergency vehicles and things like that. So, thank you. That Chevron station is just, except for that one little curb at the corner, is just one big, anywhere you want to go, you go. And I see cars just, with all that access, they still sort of run into each other, and it's just chaotic. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Yeah, go Bill.
Bill Key, West Beach again. I want to add to Chris's woe there, because I cross that street of California a lot. And when you look up the highway and you're trying to cross, and this has happened to me twice in the past week, I see nothing all the way down to Cypress coming. I see 2 or 3 cars coming out of Montero coming down. So naturally you start to cross and you go to the left turnout lane. So you get halfway across in hopes that then you can cross the rest of the way when the 3rd or 4th car goes by you. And out of nowhere, because I didn't see a single car when I looked, out of one of those side streets or one of those driveways, some car comes barreling up, laying on the horn, and it's like, well, wait a second, I'm already halfway out here. What am I supposed to do, jump into traffic or run back? So I give them the New York salute, hoping that they'll stop. And but the idea is you're trying to cross there, and you got, where all that dirt is, you got cars that just decide, I want to get out on the highway. And if I want to go north, I'm going to cross both lanes. And that just compounds the fact that everybody who lives on the hillside of West Beach that takes a walk, walks down to the beach, and that's where they're crossing. And it's, you know, mothers with kids, people with dogs on the leash or whatever. You can't have like 75 different angles sort of flying at the time. When I first moved here, all that dirt there wasn't there. That was greenery. So over time, they've eroded that by pulling off the highway and killing the bushes that used to be there. They've taken that private lot now and turned it into a driveway. I don't know who the owner is, but you know, if it was me, I would lay down some logs and not want to assume the liability of somebody getting hurt on that.
And as Chris pointed out, next block down, we got the same kind of garbage going on, only there they paved it over, but you don't know. Then when I'm driving, I see a side street coming up, you take your foot off the gas, you're sort of coasting, you wait, because somebody might run a stop sign, or somebody might run the light, but if you had to do that every inch of Highway 1 from North Moss Beach down to the airport, well, gee, maybe we could slow the traffic down to 25 and then we could get across. But it's just, it's the Wild West, it's crazy. And we spent, I don't know, how many years talking about Highway 1 safety and mobility study and traffic calming devices? Things like that would calm the traffic down. People would know that, okay, I can go here, but I'm gonna have to slow down because here's a street and I see 3 cars queued up trying to come out of Virginia or trying to come out of California or trying to come out, whatever the next street is, I don't remember right now, but we need more of that. And then I would even ask you, please get the, through Moss Beach, I don't see why they upped the speed limit from 45 in Montero to 50 in Moss Beach when we have a lot more people crossing in Moss Beach than we do in Montero. Nothing against Montero. I'm glad you have it at 45. I wish I had it at 40 so we could ask for 35. But this would be a great start.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Anybody else from the audience want to make a comment or raise a question?
Actually,
Yeah,
I
sure,
just
Chris.
have one more question. So when the proposed development south of Virginia goes in, so what are they going to be required to do in terms of curb and?
They're going to have their access on Virginia,
Oh, okay. Great.
period.
Okay,
That's
so
it.
so they're not going to get into this on
No.
either side, okay.
No,
And the
not gonna let that
council
happen.
has
There's
asked
no
for some
guarantee
kind
of
of
that.
a barricade to prevent access from Highway 1.
Also for a path in front so pedestrians are safe.
Oh, nice. An actual curb or
Maybe
a
not.
sidewalk?
Well, in front of the commercial building, the sidewalk or whatever, trail, whatever.
Oh.
A designated place, here's where you walk. So you can go down the west side of the highway in that area.
We don't know if that requirement will be added, but we've asked for it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, thank you.
All right, discussion and comments from the council. Dan, I'm going to hold off on you because you started before. Claire was the first one who wanted to comment, then Dan, then Brandon.
Just to reiterate from what Bill was saying, certainly crossing Highway 1 is a major issue, but also pedestrians walking down Highway 1 on the west side. Very difficult to walk that block because people are turning in and out all the time. Same with in front of the Chevron station. And I would guess possibly even the same at Surfers Beach. But it's definitely a pedestrian safety issue.
Well, this is for Lisa. I guess it's a question. It's more of a rhetorical comment, I guess, because I don't expect answers to this. I don't think there are answers, but okay. So you cited these policies, I guess, standards, whatever Caltrans would call that, which they're clearly not enforcing. Why not? I mean, that's what I mean. I know you don't have but why do we have it then if it's just not going to be observed? Like I said, I guess that's a rhetorical statement. And then my next rhetorical question statement, so you can mull that over while I give you the next rhetorical unanswerable question. So Caltrans, again, they're not going to do anything about this, and yet in other places, like, say, Graywell Cove, they're going to just go right by the number, just the absolute, right out of the book, it's got to be exactly this way, ADA, but they have lost credibility with me because I don't understand their decision-making or their application of their policy and rules. It seems to be capricious and haphazard, and so I guess I'm hopeless on this project because it's clearly in violation of the rule that you cited there, right there, Procedures Manual, Chapter 27, Topic 104.2, clearly in violation of that, and yet nothing. So, I mean, what can we do? I mean,
Well, so now we have all these numbers and policies, and we'll with renewed vigor, we will sally forth to see if we can get this done.
okay, thank you.
And I will add that Caltrans is now doing this Complete Streets work more than they used to. Complete Streets is a set of guidelines and grants for highways, state highways, that bisect communities, which this highway definitely does. So far, we've not managed to get onto that program, but I keep hoping we can. I will also say Graywell Cove is different in that it's not a Caltrans initiated project, but it is an initiated project. So when the project was initiated, Caltrans cut in with all the requirements. Here, for better or worse, we don't have any project. We're trying to get a project. I'm going to hold off for a moment, Claire, unless it's directly related to that.
It is directly related to that. We don't have any grants currently, as you just said, that would address this, the complete streets in the Midcoast. Who would be doing that? The county would be initiating that?
It would
So-
be initiated by the county or some of the regional. Well,
But the county could
Caltrans
apply?
does not initiate complete streets. It's a response from Caltrans. It's a set of guidelines, and they respond to community that asks them to work on it, but they don't usually initiate.
So is there a way to include in this consideration asking the county to put more of an effort to apply for money to get this done?
Well, okay, these two, we're asking for two, and we're including Chevron, dragging Chevron in with this. I think it helps Chevron to show that we're being consistent with these other areas too. So with these three areas, I think that we focus on this. Now, the way it's set up for Surface Beach and the restaurant, it's a simple fix. I mean, you can't, we're not, there was a dirt berm before, it could be a dirt berm again, or logs down at Surface Beach. At the restaurant, I think something that takes up as little space as possible, so it doesn't impinge on the parking would be good. It doesn't need to be fancy. And I think that the issue, I think we should keep this simple and focus on that. And try and get some kind of flow of communication or something happening with Caltrans, some, I don't know, if.
Yeah, it seems like Senator Hill's office worked really well, working with Joan, so I would suggest that they would have the best.
It was limited to giving us contact and to putting her thumb on it so the person actually got back to us.
Okay.
But we don't know if on something like this where we're asking for a policy change or a little bit of a project, whether they would think, well, who the heck are you? Why should we do what you said? That was why I was saying if the county supervisor, since we're only advisory, if the supervisor said, yes, I support this, let's do this, could you please do this, or whatever. And I'm not sure whether this would end up being something that Caltrans would say, okay, the county can do it, get an encroachment permit. Maybe they'll say that. I mean, they did that with the street light that Supervisor Horsley wanted to have at Virginia, and the county Public Works had. It took years. But I mean, there has to be a way. So we'll.
Yeah,
So Lisa, are you mostly looking for a statement of principle that we would like to see these things done, and then the strategy would develop after that?
So what I would like is for the council to vote that we will request that Caltrans close off, da-da-da, like that. That's the motion. And then with that, we're going to shop this around. We're gonna we don't know the exact person to send it to, but we'll send it to a group of people.
And I would suggest that we keep any complete streets applications separate. I have been meaning to do more research into those programs, and I will take that on and report back at a future council meeting. And I know that there are other places the county is working with that program, so I'll ask Ellie for some help with that at some point. But I think we should keep that separate.
Could I add one
Sure.
thing? I would just say, based on my experience working with Caltrans, especially with Graywell Cove, what may seem like a simple fix or a simple project or a simple improvement generally hasn't been. And my guess is that even though there was a berm there in the past, based on today's standards that Caltrans has, I'm guessing their standard is not a berm separating the highway. So it would likely be something, I'm not sure exactly what
There's
their
a
standards
guardrail
are.
just north of there. Maybe they would extend a guardrail, I don't know.
Yeah,
Logs?
And for the GCSD location, I can find out from Delia what, if anything, Caltrans said about that. I got the impression that they just hadn't gotten a response from Caltrans, but I'll find out.
Can I talk now, Dave?
Still Brandon. You were next.
Yeah, so back at the question I was about to ask earlier, so if the GCSD is going to line up a row of logs, and let's just say we got our barrier we wanted, there's going to be a corridor of empty spaces that vehicles cannot reach, and that would reduce parking spaces at that dirt lot. And so if you were to go forth on this, you would probably have to write a letter to GCSD to not go forth with their project.
I just don't think that correlation exists. So the issue was raised at GCSD whether anybody would care from the Coastal Commission that visitor parking was reduced, and the issue was sort of sidestepped. But I think that's completely separate. Because we're talking about, at this point, we're talking about from the highway. GCSD is looking at it from a different perspective.
Well, but the issues connect. I mean, parking is a big...
They connect, but they're different issues. We're looking at it from a safety perspective. They're looking at it from a slightly different perspective.
And what perspective are they looking at?
They have had complaints of people using that as a shortcut to get on the highway, and they want to stop that. They're also planning a park along the Burnham Strip, so they're starting to lay out the parking lot, which was always planned to be smaller than the existing dirt.
And
Yeah.
I think that if GCSD knows we're trying to get this done, or it gets done, that may make it so they don't need to do it. You see what I mean? I think they don't, as Dave said, they don't want people driving onto the highway. They can't put anything in the Caltrans right away. They're limited to putting it on their property. But if Caltrans gets this done, or if somebody gets this done in the Caltrans right of way, then the problem is solved. We don't intend to take any parking away. That's not what's going on here.
GCSD is trying to delineate the boundaries of their property versus the Caltrans property. And there's a whole separate discussion they're having about whether Caltrans will let them encroach on Caltrans right away as part of their park plans. So that's separate and longer term. Okay, Arthur, did you want to say anything?
Well, the only thing I'm thinking of is that the one thing Caltrans seems real good at doing is putting up those orange cones, because they did it at the bunker. And that seems to be a permanent thing, so they could just put cones up, I guess. I don't know.
I hope that's not what we do.
I hope not, but I'm tired of looking at those cones.
I'm sure you are. Dan?
So, yeah, let's talk about the surface beach first. I tend to agree that, the berm, it's always been impassable unless there was a, super high four-wheel drive vehicle. But your average car would never even attempt to make that cross. And I guess it was partly from the work at the Surface Beach repair that caused this problem. It's never been a problem in 30 years that I've lived here. Today, I can see that it could be a problem. So I certainly, on this one here, I just don't want to see K-rail. I don't want to see some giant, there has to be some solution that is fitting for the situation, for the environment, and maybe something can come out of the community that could solve this problem. So moving forward to the gas station. Now, I missed that planter. I'm absolutely in favor of the planter to be returned. Just so I understand, are you proposing that, I see the yellow arrow, so that would be the only access in and out of the gas station? No, the yellow,
From
Yeah,
to the right,
Vermont.
From Highway 1, this was our proposal at the
That's
last
it?
meeting, for 2 meetings. back.
nothing
And
on
then
the other
Vermont
side
for the
of the
Yeah, there's
planter?
a side,
Yes, that was what we discussed and we put in our letter the last time.
So
We
that's
already approved-
totally against the norm, you know
Th-
that, right?
This was approved by us in April.
Okay, so
And
let's not
already
waste any
sent-
more time on that, but that is completely against, I'm totally for the, planter, okay? But what you're asking, you're demanding that anybody that enters the gas station actually make a full 90-degree turn onto Vermont. They're gonna have to slow the vehicle down with cars on their tail to come to a slow 90-degree instead of entering at a 30-degree angle where like most gas stations have access off of the main road. Pull in at an angle where you wouldn't have to come to almost a complete stop backing up traffic. So those are my comments for the gas station. The planter, yes. I think you need 2 of those yellow arrows on both sides of the planter. Now let's go to the taqueria.
So in the picture, you see the yellow arrow pointing down towards this little car there in the area you want to keep open.
Yes.
That car is exiting going north.
Okay, we'll put a sign there. Well, no, don't put a sign.
Why can't the car
Give him a
just,
ticket, sheriff, you know.
why can't the car just drive straight out to Vermont?
Because you know
Exit-
what? You cannot solve all idiot drivers. A lot of the complaints that I've heard tonight are just from bad driving behavior.
No, Dan, that's not the problem. When somebody's driving at 50 miles an hour and somebody makes a unexpected appearance on the highway in front of them, or somebody slows down in front of them unexpectedly make a turn, that's not idiot behavior. But it's unexpected enough that it causes accidents. And there's plenty of studies that show that. That's why Caltrans has the limited access.
Well, I disagree. I think that this car trying to pull out of that is an idiot. I think he's an idiot. Because he's maneuvering his car. 90% of people see that and have no idea what this guy's gonna do. It's almost like a deer coming out on the road. You have no idea what is gonna happen.
We agree with
That's
that.
the car language, that's the language that driver is giving the other cars on the
But
road.
unfortunately, it is legal, that other than they're doing it right in front of somebody.
I don't think that is legal.
It is actually legal.
And that's why having a barrier there would stop that.
It isn't legal, that double yellow line according to the vehicle code.
This one,
This one.
turning left here is not legal because it's double-double, although people do it.
So I've already made my comments about this. I don't want my time getting
Yeah, okay.
torn
so-
up on this.
All right, so on to the taqueria.
So again, you know, everything that I've heard about this situation has been, you know, bad driving behavior. You know, with everything, there's always pros and cons. So I think essentially what people have kind of spoken for this red, this blocking on that red line is what they want to do is they want to have all cars making that slow, full 90-degree turn. And every time a car has to make, I don't want to say every time, but a lot of drivers to maneuver that 90-degree turn come to a very, almost a stop before they turn. And that backs up the highway. So now,
Of all the residents going into Virginia and California and everybody going to Fitzgerald, all we have to do is exactly that.
There's a
okay,
paved
so
shoulder
it's like
there.
math, right?
There's a-
Everyone adds up. So everyone counts.
Including visitors.
So
There's a
what I'm
shoulder.
saying,
There's a paved shoulder to slow for the turn.
People don't use it.
I do.
Some people do, and some people don't.
Okay, so you've expressed your opinion, we're
No,
not
no,
gonna
I'm
try
not
and talk out
done.
your
I'm
opinion.
not done. I've waited patiently.
Yeah, no, I'm not stopping you, I'm just saying, we're gonna stop arguing with opinions, because opinions can't be
Well,
drawn.
yeah, just let me get through. Let me just, okay. So, so there's that's what it sounds like, trying to force every car to enter, you know, that lot, either through California or Virginia only. Now, there's a con for that. I covered one, you know, convenience to the patrons of the restaurant. I'm with everybody in the room 100%. If somebody's going to use that as an on-ramp or off-ramp, they need to, number one, be polite. Number two, you know, not pull out unless there's a free space. Frankly, if there's no cars on the road, if there's a big break in traffic, and there's 3 cars, you know, 10 feet apart from each other, all making a right turn at the same time, that's 3 cars on the road when they can get out on the road. Otherwise, you know, they're gonna just be waiting and then potentially causing other problems down the road. So, you know, you start here, where do you stop? One of the other, was Beverly brought up the whole thing in Montera. You know, I think, you know, if you start going down this road, you're gonna really start to hurt business. You're gonna really hurt these businesses by limiting their customer access. You know, what's different from here than the situation at Sam's? You know, there's even in Pacifica, there's situations like this. It's not the access, it's the way some drivers behave badly. Okay, so the bad driver behavior could happen anywhere. It could happen coming out of Virginia, coming out of California. So, you know, I think that, you know, this particular business is a small mom and pop family business, a immigrant family, I believe. They provide a service to the community at a very reasonable price. And, you know, when you have reasonable prices, you need to make your volume. So if you choke their customers, preventing them to come in conveniently and easily, you're gonna hurt their bottom line. You're eventually gonna run them out, and who knows what will be next, an In-N-Out burger? So I think that we should have a little concern about a mom and pop family business. I mean, I've been going, ever since I moved here, I remember when it was a burger place, I know you probably do, Bill.
There was no access from the highway.
Yeah, there wasn't.
I think there was.
I think there wasn't. And we can
So-
go back and look at a map and show you.
Okay, so again, no.
Regardless
please no
of
arguing
that,
at the moment.
regardless of that, I use that restaurant. And I have,
Okay.
I'm not
so-
saying that
Okay,
some,
we're running late. I think you've made your points, and you've made good points. Do you have another point you want to make?
you know, I just think that, you know, the cost that nobody realizes is you're gonna have a lot of these, especially in the summertime, when you got out-of-towners that aren't familiar, you know, driving to Winnebago, whatever, and they just don't, they're gonna slow, you're gonna pay for this by having a lot of cars coming to a very slow, almost a stop, before they turn in. And that's gonna be detrimental to the traffic.
I have one last very quick.
Hold on. Trying to go in order. Claire, anything
No.
else you want to say?
No.
Chris, anything? Brandon?
So one last comment. So I don't really want to see our community put up a bunch of these barriers. I mean, it would be very difficult to navigate. I mean, I do go to some of these places, gas station.
So can you face the mic so the video picks you up?
And so, I mean, at a certain point, how many of these birds would or logs would you like to wall up? I mean, are you going to do this to Sam's Chowder? Are you going to do this to the Army Navy store? And second of all, we talked about this last time a little bit, but there was some mention about putting some sidewalk or walkways around there. I'm uncomfortable with that until the liability clears up. I don't want to be a business owner and be sued if I don't even know if I'm liable for such.
Okay, so that's a completely different subject, so let's not discuss it.
But it's also in this slide,
No,
right?
no, there's nothing on this slide about that.
There's no sidewalks, and we're not proposing any sidewalks.
No, there was you're referring to a sidewalk off that new development by Virginia.
Yeah, that was an
That's
answer
not
to
on
a
here.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to finish up on the council, I'll come back to the audience in a moment. Barbara, anything else?
Well, listening to Dan, I get what you're saying, and it makes me think more about it. But on the other hand, the gas station, I just think that's just a crazy, that needs to be taken care of. But I also agree that I don't think it would hurt to have a little extra space so we could go both ways. So I kind of tend to agree with what Dan says.
Okay, Lisa, you want to say anything?
Well, I'm a little confused because we discussed this section at our April meeting, and at that time, the red line only went about 2/3 of the way, and I left an opening there for some, and the council, except for Dan, said, no, make the line go all the way to California. So that's what I put in the slide, because I thought that's in the minutes. Everybody said their opinion, and everybody but Dan said the line should go the full block. So that's what you've got. And I do think that the restaurant has great food, and the people will find a way to get there. There's 2 ways in, and the people use those streets to get to the Marine Reserve, and I'm sure that they can get their burritos and whatnot.
So, yeah,
So-
they're gonna impact the
So,
access to the Marine Reserve as
Dan,
well.
you've said, you're repeating yourself. I'm going to cut you off, because we're running late. Some of the people in the audience want to say something. So I want to briefly say, the Taqueria is a great place. I go there all the time. I'm even guilty of going on and off the highway where that red line is. I've admitted on it in the past publicly. I'll do it again. It is an issue. I've also seen some really dangerous people going on or off the highway there. I don't think I'm one of them, but, you know, other people might have a different opinion. But they have plenty of parking. I think they're so popular that whether somebody has to come in on Virginia or off the highway is not going to impact their business significantly.
I disagree, that's
I
about
know you do,
that's
Dan.
about, you're cutting
Dan,
about
Dan,
50% of
Dan,
the revenue. You said,
Dan,
you said
stop.
plenty of parking.
Stop.
I had a comment.
You had your comment, you're repeating, I'm speaking. Let's keep it civil. If you want another chance to speak, I'll give you another chance to speak. But right now, I'm expressing my opinions. So my opinions are, I don't think it will impact their business. I think it will increase the safety. This stretch from California to Cyprus has historically been the most dangerous section of Highway 1 on the entire Midcoast. And there's a reason for it. There's a lot of accesses, there's a lot of pedestrians, there's a lot of traffic, both residential and visitor.
Isn't
So,
Devil's Slides more dangerous?
in terms of accidents on the Midcoast. So anything we can do to improve that safety, even if it doesn't make it perfect, to me is worth doing. So I wanted to get that part out. I'm going to come back to Dan first because I cut him off. Dan, go ahead.
Well, okay, so, if you put a physical barrier there, 95% of people won't know that they can park in there. Okay, so that is, looking at that right now, it's about 50% of the parking. So that, when I say 50%, you count the cars. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, 8 cars out in front. In the back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's more than 50% that you would be cutting them. You're taking away 50% of their potential customers. So you know, you say that, oh, they'll find a way in. Well, you know what? Society, everybody needs something now. If it's not obvious, they'll just keep driving by. Or if it looks like the other parking is full, nobody wants to wait. They'll just keep driving by. The place will lose business. As far as, I agree with you 100%. I agree with everybody in the room. Yes, this is not an ideal area of Highway 1. It's you know, there's a lot of ins and outs. There's a lot of high volume, and you know, yeah, there's other solutions that have been discussed and probably will get discussed further. But right now, tonight, we're talking about this, and I don't believe that this situation, by putting a wall, is actually going to make the situation safer. I do not believe it. I think it might make it worse.
So, just
Claire?
I don't want this to drag on forever, but I want to make two really quick points. Partly based on what you said, and like Barbara, I do listen to a little bit of a different frame of what's being said when I hear you. First of all, I think that, yes, there is a lot of bad behavior, bad driving, but I think that part of the role of government is to facilitate good driving and to discourage bad driving, and this is what we're trying to do here. Beyond that, I think I actually was opposed to blocking off that whole red line before. The reason I actually would like to come back to that briefly is because the entrance off of California is extremely tenuous. That is private land, apparently, unrelated to the restaurant, and at any moment that could be closed off, and that would very much limit the access to the restaurant, so it might make some sense to leave something open on Highway 1, just not nearly as much as there is.
So, I'm also concerned that, let's just say GCSD's acted already and put the logs by the property line in that lot. Then when Caltrans decided to put their barriers or logs or whatever, then I doubt GCSD would rescind their decision if it's already made and already built and they already spent the taxpayer dollars, and then we will have the corridor where about I believe a couple dozen spaces could be fit in there.
No, not that many. So
I do believe it could be fit in a couple
just-
dozen spaces. I
it's
disagree
like
with
the
you.
rest of the Burnham Strip that's in the Caltrans right away, the Moss Beach, Montera, just because it's Caltrans right away doesn't mean people should park there. So I don't see that personally as a viable argument.
I mean, let me ask you, is that structure the skateboard little park thing, or?
Yeah.
It's mostly on Caltrans, partly on GCSD.
So that means that access to it would be more limited if there are those two barriers to it. So, and I would assume that people would park to go to that skate park.
They would still be able to do so.
Yeah, it would be even more limited. And especially on busiest days like 4th of July's and all these other special events, there's going to be a lot more bad parking in even worse areas.
We aren't talking
Well,
about.
it is related.
It is
It is
indirectly related.
And
It's not our agenda item to talk about parking on Caltrans land.
Well,
That's
it
a
should
completely
be.
different, well, put together the agenda item, will help you do it. But it's a different agenda item, we can't discuss it under this agenda item. Okay?
Is there a way to call the question here? I do
I
think this has
had-
gone long enough.
I promised the audience one more chance. Go for it, Beverly.
Thank you. I realize
we are running over. Unless I'm missing something, just a really quick on the Moss Beach restaurant, 2 driveways would solve the back side of the restaurant and the front side of the restaurant access right away. So that's a simple solution.
2 driveways?
Yeah, where the cars are parked, you driveway, 2 driveways on Virginia.
So there's,
They're already-
there's access from Virginia
One.
today.
2 driveways.
Several people on the council have suggested leaving this open.
Right, no, I'm saying close.
This is across private.
Right, no, all that closed and two driveway accesses for 2 areas of parking, but that wasn't really why I wanted to come up here. So I'm moving on. You're emphasizing safety in this proposal, and I would just suggest in terms of presenting it to get the CHP data in the proposal.
We have it.
Great. So front and center.
We're using this.
Where is the CHP data?
No, we're not using crash data, we're using existing policies in the Highway 1 Mobility Study, in the local coastal program, and Caltrans. They have existing policies
Right,
limiting.
Lisa,
So
you're arguing with a
I'm just
point.
suggesting that you add crash data. I think it will support your argument. It's a recommendation.
We have that from the CHP.
I thought you did.
We could consider adding it.
Right, based on what you mentioned, Dave. Also, when and if this occurs, to mitigate safety issues, restaurants can always add signage for wayfinding to the restaurant. And per L's comment, so true. Caltrans has a very well-defined solution specs for what they put up, and they're not really coastal-friendly design. There's been a lot of difficulty impacting that. So often we get these concrete barriers, or we get the metal barriers. I think it would be good to look ahead and see what they would generally use to solve these issues, and in the proposal, see if that can be mitigated as well if you don't like the concrete barriers, or if you don't like the metal barriers and you'd like something more coastside friendly. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. All right, I'm now going to call the question unless, Carl? Sorry.
Moss Beach again, just briefly. There are, as far as making these turns on and off of the highway, all over the place now, where the shoulder solid white line is, in all the places that we're talking about in Moss Beach, not just at Virginia here, if they would change a number of feet close to where the turn is made to a dashed line, which is now commonly recognized, legally recognized as a way as you can get over there to make the turn. I mean, these dashed lines are done at the ends of bike lanes where turns are going to be made off of highways to allow cars to get off
So
on.
you're suggesting, for example,
Right
maybe
there.
50 feet here?
Yeah, whatever the standard is for doing that, that's a possibility. The other thing is, don't be concerned that and so frustrated with Caltrans in your dealings with them to think that you can never get anything done. And I would just point out that where a couple of young people went off the highway just past Montera on like the first curve north of Montera, first sharp curve north of Montera, and went off and over into the ocean because the low stone wall wasn't enough to block them, without any governmental or anything else, but just a lot of public hoorah. Caltrans put in some K-rail right there. Now, I'm not suggesting that that was the best solution or anything else. I'm just pointing out that sometimes when there's enough fervor over something, that Caltrans will move on it. So this isn't entirely an abstract exercise if you choose to go ahead and request this stuff.
And I will add that that was driven in large part by lobbying of state legislators.
Yeah, I'll get it in on this.
Go ahead, Chris.
I just want to say that I really appreciate your concern for the business owner, and to use an example that both of you brought up about Sam's. I think the next time you drive by Sam's and you take a look at the way that you get into their parking lots, you'll realize that it's not a big wide open space where you can just flood both parking lots. Very narrow driveway for both of their lots, and they don't seem to have suffered at all for that. I don't think Coastside Market has suffered because of it, and when I go to the Valero station in Half Moon Bay and I'm traveling north on the highway, I literally turn right on Kelly and left into the gas station, because traveling on the highway and then ripping into that parking lot doesn't make sense for me as a safe driver that knows what that situation is. So I don't avoid the Valero gas station because I have to make a right and then a left. I know it's there. So I appreciate the attention that you're paying to the aesthetic of what the barrier might look like, or the impact that it might have on the businesses. But I hope that you'll also recognize that you represent us. You represent, those are my neighbors. That's me, my neighbors, my friends, and your constituents that are coming out of the 8 streets that you don't see just out of the periphery of that shop. And we're all trying to pass quickly. I don't think a K-rail is the most elegant way of preventing traffic from all pouring out onto the highway, but I'll take it if it saves somebody's life. And I hope that you'll consider that.
All right, thank you, Chris. I am now going to call the question.
Add some new information, just
No,
very brief.
No,
Please,
there's no, I'm convinced there's no information to add at this point. I'm not
There
going
is.
to have further discussion. Okay, if you
You're
can make it,
squelching.
if you can make it in one sentence with no motion, go for
I
it.
just wanted to add on what Beverly mentioned, that once you start the process and you put it into Caltrans lap, Ellie can attest, at some point you lose 100% control. They will do what they want. They will, so,
Okay, you've
so
made
we
your
lose
point.
control.
You made your point, stop.
Can I have a second bite of the apple, please?
Sure, you're the only one who hasn't.
I know, there is a lot of thought being thrown around here, fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
And there's no real numbers, it's just opinion, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. But just looking at that picture, if there was a railing there, there'd be all those extra cars would be able to park there. So, you know, you're not gonna be losing it. And if you have to go in and out of Virginia, that's actually better. If you have the Wild West, where people are gonna be coming out of Virginia, California, and anywhere along that dirt, you have no idea, as a pedestrian, as a driver, who has the right of way. Which was the first one there to get on the intersection. So I've heard all this craziness, but that's why we have streets, that's why we have corners, that's why we have stop signs, you know, and it shouldn't be all the way along. So just ask Caltrans to enforce their policies. They're there. That's all we're asking. And this idea that somehow the libertarian nation is gonna go under because we're asking for some safety in West Beach. Well, we've only been asking for the 35 years I've lived there, and we have yet to get even an extra stop sign. And I live there, okay?
Thank you. All right, I'm calling a question. Does anybody want to make a motion? So Lisa,
There's
did
the
you have
motion.
suggested wording for your
There it is.
motion?
It's the desired outcome of the agenda item.
Can we do it in
Does
three
somebody-
separate motions, but by combining them all at once, it's gonna be way too confusing.
No, we're not going to do.
There's
as
only
chair,
two
I'm
we're
gonna put my
talking
foot
about.
down. We only have one agenda item. We're only making one motion. Only having one vote.
So,
Does somebody want to make?
I'll make the
an-
motion.
Okay, I was going to ask, because of all the requests we've had in the discussion, does somebody want to amend that in any concise way?
I guess my only amendment would be MCC request that Caltrans enforce its existing policies.
And close off informal direct highway one access.
Brandon, do you have a concise amendment?
I would, it's a very specific and concise one. I would ask that that they put a speed bump by the Surfers Beach East Side.
That's a different subject, we can't discuss it under this agenda item. Brown Act is very clear on what you can and cannot do on an agenda item, that's not this agenda item. Okay,
Can I speak to Chris's
you may.
amendment? This wording here is not the letter. We are not tied to this wording. Basically, this confirms the council wants these two segments closed. Then, like I said, we're going to get support for this, and we will point out these. No doubt, these 4 slides will serve as the letter. So the exact wording is in play. You know.
And I would personally not be too happy. It's a little bit confrontational, and I think the point that several people made, avoiding confrontation is helpful in dealing with Caltrans. Just like any other organization, you're confrontational, they tend to get set in their position. So unless I see, I'm going to ask a quick show of hands. Anybody want to support Chris's amendment?
I'll rescind it
Okay.
based on Lisa's comment.
All right.
I understand that.
So Barbara has made a motion to use the wording that's on the slide. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay.
I'd like to make
All-
that
all-
motion.
Is it a motion to amend this motion? There's an official way to do that, if that's what you want to do.
Yes,
Okay?
let's take all this and table it.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay?
I second it.
Okay, we have an amendment and a second. All in favor?
We're voting on the amendment now.
This is on the amendment.
To table it?
Yeah.
The amendment to table. Okay, all opposed? Okay, the amendment, proposed amendment fails. 2 in favor, 5 against. We are now back to the original motion. All in favor? 5 against. 1, 2, abstaining,
Nay.
0. Thank you. Catch my breath. We are now on to, if I'm not mistaken, council activities and reports. Anybody have anything they wish to report? Lisa?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Airport Street parking restrictions were approved by the Board of Supervisors on June 19.
Anything else?
That's it.
Brandon?
So apparently, I've spoke to Jim Irizarry, and the elections, June elections will be certified on July 5th. And then there will be a period of 5 days where they would allow anyone to contest the election for a recount, and after that, the results will be final.
Thank you. Anybody else have council activities? Okay, I have a couple of things. I talked to Sam Hertzberg at a meeting yesterday, the core planning and interpretive committees for the Bologna Portola Heritage Trail. And the planning is getting to the point where there's going to be some public meetings. Current plan is to have 3 public meetings in late September and early October. Likely locations, not yet set, are South Coast somewhere, probably Pescadero, North Coast, probably Pacifica, and over on the peninsula, probably Redwood City. These will be presentations of what's going on, where we are, what the high-level plans are. We might even have a trail logo and a proposed route by then. Also heard from Sam after that meeting that Quarry Park master plan is on hold. There was a decision to accelerate the flood park master plan, and the Parks Department does not have the staff to do both of them simultaneously. So the flood park master plan is in process, and the Quarry Park master plan is now planned to go to the Park and Rec Commission in October. There's not any more public meetings planned on that. And I believe that's all I've got. So if there nothing else, we'll close that agenda item, move on to future agendas. I have the housing presentation listed. Lisa reminded me I should have added the third of her presentations. Does anybody else have anything they want to put on the agenda for July 11th?
I don't, but I have a couple questions for you
Sure.
about that. So, I will not be here, and I have some strong feelings about the Graywell Cove agenda item. I cannot, obviously I cannot vote in abstention, right? Okay. Can I submit comments that
Sure.
can be read into the record?
Sure, happy to do that. I will try and put you on the review for my letter. When are you actually leaving?
I believe we're rolling out on the 5th.
Okay, I will try and get the draft to you before that, so you have something to comment on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.